So we'll do something similar to the last one. And again, so here's something you can do. You can pour a ton in, right? Oh, way too much. You can put it back. You haven't mixed it yet. As long as you're using a fresh cup that you haven't had anything else in it, you won't be introducing anything here. So a lot of times I'll just kind of eyeball it and I'll move stuff back and forth. So let's go. Maybe we'll do one more.
One, two.
Okay, so I've got, that's basically 1.1 is what we're measuring for. So you're going to do the same thing in this other cup. Make sure it's zeroed out. And again, don't worry about pouring too much. We can always put it back in here.
Okay.
Go.
Science.
Ooh, perfect. Real close. So I'll just put a little bit back in. Set here.
I think you gave me these gloves.
Yep. I've got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, so do I take them off? No.
Keep them on for a second. We're in a mix. Also, don't be worried about like saving gloves. They're pretty cheap. Buy a bunch, switch them out often. Use them. Sometimes when I run out, I end up, if you get pigment, like some of this dye in your hands, it's there for a while. So we're doing purple, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so let's take this guy. If you'll open blue, I'll open red. And let's just do 2 drops of each. So I'll do 2 drops red, a little more squeeze of red, madness. Way more precision than me.
Whoa, why does it do that? It's so crazy. It's just like, here's your drop in a line.
Something else too, to get to where you can perfect, do you want to kind of mix the color here? If you're making something, you want to make sure you get the right color. I'll oftentimes do a lot of tests where I'll use a mold from something I'm not using anymore, and I'll mix and I'll be like, okay, 1 drop of this, 1 drop of that. I'll mix it and kind of cast it in like a very small amount, so I'm not wasting material, just to figure out if I'm getting a color that I like. And so I'll oftentimes take notes, like once I pop it out, I'll write on the back, like this is 1 drop of red and 1 drop of blue. That way later on, when I've done maybe 6 tests, I can look back and hold it up to my costume, see which color is working, and I'll know which one is working. So, looks good. All right, so we'll pour the hardener in here first. Yep. That's good. I'll keep it poured back. That guy up there, yep. All right. And so then we're just going to pour away. And for this guy, I usually kind of start from the center. To avoid getting bubbles, it's kind of nice to start pouring wherever the lowest point of the mold is, and sort of let the liquid just spill in everywhere else. That way you aren't pouring so quickly that bubbles can catch in some of the undercuts. So again, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I poured everything in, not everything's covered. So what we're going to do is just kind of lift it up and shift it around a little bit. It has kind of the look of Kool-Aid at this point. But there, we've got everything covered. So perfect. Everyone think Chuck? If you want to Chuck, throw your gloves over here.
Chuck, 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 Chuck.
Better
Donald
Trump.
Trumping Trump.
All right.
Give me a high five.
So let's talk about this guy because I think he's cured at this point. So you'll see from the bottom, we've obviously pushed the mold down enough that it's kind of ended up everywhere. All you do is carefully sort of peel it up and off. And you can help it by kind of pushing some of these little places in the back. And then give it a screw. And we have a mold. Voila. And again, if we were using this just to get kind of the heart, we'd probably plug up some of the edges. with the clay to just have the piece be on. And I'll go ahead and pass it around. That's freshly made mold. And you can also see the difference between that particular type of mold and the other one that I've been passing around. These guys have a little bit more stretch to them. They're pretty strong. This guy is really strong, not as much stretch. It's usually enough just to bend the top. But these I prefer when I'm doing things where I really have to like curve something around because it's a little more flexible. So, remember this guy we poured earlier? You'll see, because I didn't set him up on a very even surface, everything kind of leaks out the side. Never worry, this is very easy to just break off, clean up, etc. It's already gone. When you're demolding, I usually start from one side and kind of push with my thumb to help release any of the small pieces. You never want to go quickly. It's good to go slow because, you know, again, some of these little details could be fragile and you can kind of break them. At this point, I'm demolding. It's probably a little bit before the final cure. So you'll see this guy is still a little bit bendable, right? So at this point, I could even hold him up and kind of bend him to the shape I want and just sort of wait out that extra minute. But since he's not really for anything, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pass him around. He'll probably be a little flexible and a little bit warm for the first few of you that hold it, and then as he goes around, you'll find that he's hard and that he's not as bendable. And you got a good pink color, so success. How are we on time? Great. All right, guys. So let's talk about some other types of molds, like box molds. So let's say you want to cast something that's a little bigger, or maybe you don't want to just use, you know, a little piece of cardboard to make a mold wall. And what a mold wall is, hopefully I explained this well enough. If I was casting this object and I was going to pour in a rubber around it to get that mold, obviously I have to have something that will then contain that rubber so it doesn't just like go out. A lot of times people use, you know, you can use cardboard and just hot glue it and just make sure there's no place for any liquid to leak out. But something I really like using are Duplo blocks. Those are like those giant Legos that you had when you were a kid. The nice thing about those is it never really sticks to them because they're very smooth, they're plastic. And so for this, like you'll see all these little, you can kind of see the shape of these brick blocks around it. The nice thing about having those is you can reuse them over and over to build walls, and you can make different shapes. So in this case, this guy, I needed like a square to completely contain what I was molding. This guy needed something longer, but I could just use the same bricks and make whatever shape I wanted. You can also put it back together so for example, if you guys can see, maybe not with the light, these are very thin, these particular edges. I didn't leave a lot of room, whereas here it's really thick. So, like I said, this is very bendable. So if I need this, and this was a knee pad, it's kind of hard to tell, it was like a knee pad I made. I didn't want the shape to be warped, but a lot of times if you have a really thin mold, as you're filling it with liquid, it might get heavier and kind of push out and it can warp the mold. So the nice thing about using those blocks is I can always rebuild them around this so it's that exact shape. So then when I fill this again with the resin, I've got something stronger. It's called a mother mold, and basically that holds the rubber in place. It's structured so that this can't bend as I'm slush casting or filling it with stuff. So I'll pass this guy around, you can kind of see the difference in the walls. So when you're doing that, so that one again was a knee pad. It's open at the top so that I could pour in, slush cast it, and it was going to be stuck on something. But let's talk about if you need to mold something that has a front and a back side, right? That's a little more complex. Here's something I did for a Lux costume. This actually went with that knee pad, and it was this little wing guy that would kind of hook onto the side of it, right? So this is just pink foam, insulation foam that you can get from a hardware store. And I kind of drew on and carved out the shape that I wanted. You'll see there's little bits of clay in here that I maybe used to smooth some things out. And then this hole was made so that I had like a little gem thing and it fits that exactly right. But I just wanted to get a cast of this. So I've created it, but obviously it's kind of got a curved shape to it. If I just kind of do an open mold, I'm not going to have anything on the back. Or I would have to cast it as like a really heavy, solid piece. So I needed something that would do both sides. So at that point, what you do is you put down some clay, and again, handiest thing to have in a shop, clay. Basically, I would put this down a little bit of clay, and I filled around all of the sides, all the way up to the edge of those Duplo blocks, right? So you can kind of see, hopefully, can you guys see how there's a little line here? So that line is how high I filled that clay to. And I tried to make it a pretty nice, even looking line. This is where your mold's gonna meet up, and it's also when you cast, that can be, you can get a little excess. Like if you guys look at any products you buy anywhere that's plastic, you'll usually find like a very thin line, and that's where like a molds come together to make whatever it is. And a lot of times this seam, they try to hide it. So you might hide it in, you know, if there's a groove or something, it might be hidden in a groove, or someplace that's logical, looks very aesthetic. The other thing to do, and in this case, I actually placed them along here on some of the flat planes so that I could sand it off really easily for the finished product. So you build up to wherever that line is with clay. So basically now you're looking at a mold wall, clay, and this piece, and it's in there solidly. I'll usually take the backside of a pen and kind of jam in a few places, which sounds crazy, but it'll make sense in a minute. So, and then I have more built up. That's when I'll pour on basically the mold material, right? So that was step one.